Here, read this.
Woof.
Good evening. It's the 20th of November 2025, and here is your poem for the day. A little bit later than usual, but here we are. As always, I'll read through the poem in one, and then I'll share some thoughts on it at the end. Tonight's poem is called Arthur's Seat, Early Morning, by Nan Shepherd. That summer night, a haze of apricot drifted about the spires and houses. Low and luminous it hung, and in the glow the city trembled like a thing half wrought, from dreams and wild desire, that ere the thought took substance faded, till it seemed to grow part of the very sky, and none might know the earth from heaven. Dusk quivered, dark shook them not. And we at morning found the city lying, and a flash of sea, and the mountains lying afar, gathered in awful trance, and watched it broken but kept, while earth, indifferent and flying, danced on through heaven like any other star, one still wrapt secret of hers for token. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Edinburgh, Arthur's Seat is the highest peak of the hills around Edinburgh. It's an ancient volcano that looms over the city, giving you a view just like the one described in Shepherd's poem. Actually, the reason I chose this poem to talk about tonight has nothing to do with Nan Shepherd, really, and it has everything to do with an exhibition I went to see yesterday, an exhibition of photographs by Alfred Buchan, who was a daredevil aerial photographer, and one of his most famous photographs is of Edinburgh, the city lying in the bottom or at the foreground of the photograph, Arthur's Seat looming in the middle distance, and then these big dramatic, super dramatic clouds. Now, you might have seen this photograph. It's very famous. It's on the front cover of T.M. Devine's formidable History of the Scottish Nation. What I didn't know until I went to this exhibition is just how much composite trickery was involved in creating these photographs. So Buchan would go up in his plane and take photographs of the landscape and of clouds. He has stunning pictures of just clouds on their own, these kind of abstract, mythical cloudscapes. But then he would just sort of match the landscape to a set of clouds that he thought fitted the picture, that weren't necessarily the clouds above Edinburgh for the Edinburgh photograph, just ones that worked. And in the case of the Edinburgh photograph, I think he stitched together the city of Edinburgh, and then Arthur's Seat, and then the clouds on top, and then the plane would be added afterwards. And what was really interesting about the plane in particular, sort of obvious when you think about it, I'm sure that anyone well-versed in visual media would have been able to guess some of this, but I had no idea. He'd photographed the plane grounded, basically, because, of course, taking a picture of one moving plane from another moving plane is unlikely to result in a clear, unblurred image. So he'd take a picture of an unmanned, grounded aeroplane, and then what he'd do is he'd obviously minimize it, place it into his photograph, and then he'd employ all sorts of fascinating little tricks, like he would reinflate the tires on the aeroplane, because of course when you take a picture of a grounded aeroplane, the tires are flat against the ground. Can't have that, so with black paint he'd just fill in, make round the wheels out, adding chalk if he wanted a bit more light on certain surfaces, over or under exposing photographs if he wanted a little useful blur to merge two different photographs together. And so it was the thought of Alfred Buchan developing his fabricated view of Edinburgh in his dark room with his various different photographs of the sky and the city, and then Arthur's Seat in the middle, and sort of Frankensteining them together in his developing liquids, and then seeing his picture emerge from that fluid that reminded me of the lines in Shepherd's poem. In the glow, the city trembled like a thing half wrought, from dreams and wild desire, that ere the thought took substance faded, till it seemed to grow part of the very sky, and none might know the earth from heaven. So Shepherd's language there sort of suggests that the view might be in some way constructed, half wrought, and brought strangely into combination, the not being able to tell the difference between earth and heaven. That had me thinking about Buchan blurring the lines to make sure Arthur's Seat sat where it should sit on the city. And it also made me think of Nan Shepherd's own use of light. I love that apricot haze she has in the first line of her poem. And Shepherd elsewhere shows a photographic sensitivity to light. There's a poem where she describes mountains as just masses of light amongst light, as if it's all just one element and they are merely a higher density of the light that surrounds them. So I was struck by the contrast of how they used light and the contrast of their vision. Buchan's a reconstructed, semi-fabricated instant captured in a flash, whereas Nan Shepherd seems to view light melding together because she's taking an infinitely longer view, a sort of time lapse of light as it moves across epochs, and yet both leave you with a similar impression of intense luminosity. So yeah, if you are in Edinburgh between now and I think April, that exhibition is free and it's on at the National Portrait Gallery. When we went to the exhibition yesterday, we were lucky enough to chat to Buckham's grandson, who told us more about his grandfather and how he'd discovered that he'd had this life as an aerial daredevil. He also tipped us off that there's a book on Buckham by Celia Ferguson, which I will be checking out. I'm sure that will make an appearance at some point. So that's your poem for the day, Arthur's Seat by Nan Shepherd, borrowing some of the light of Alfred Buckham.